Hi guys, sorry to interrupt your viewing, but please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you.
You won't need it again anyway, my sister said, her voice dripping with the kind of casual cruelty she had perfected over the years, the smirk on her face twisting like a knife in my gut as she held up the delicate lace of my old wedding dress, examining it in the full-length mirror of my parents' guest bedroom like it had always been hers to take. The worst part wasn't that she had stolen it, that she had taken something deeply personal without even asking, that she had claimed ownership over a piece of my past like it was nothing. No, the worst part was that I just stood there, watching, forcing a smile onto my lips as if I wasn't feeling the slow burn of resentment curling inside me like smoke in a locked room. I didn't fight. I didn't argue. I let her take it. But I knew, oh, I knew. The thing about Melanie was that she had always been like this, selfish, entitled, the golden child who could do no wrong in our mother's eyes, the one who took what she wanted without a second thought and expected the world to rearrange itself around her desires. I was older by 5 years, but you wouldn't know it from the way our family treated us. Melanie had been born with the uncanny ability to manipulate any situation to her advantage, flashing a sweet, innocent smile when necessary, pouting just right to make people bend to her will, throwing perfectly timed tantrums when things didn't go her way. I had spent my entire life learning to pick my battles, learning that sometimes the only way to survive was to let her believe she had won. I had come home for the weekend, just a simple visit, nothing more, an attempt to reconnect with my parents after my divorce, an effort to prove to them, to myself, that I was okay, that I was moving on, that the past was just that, the past. I hadn't thought about that dress in years, hadn't even realized it was still hanging in the back of the closet in my old bedroom, tucked away in a garment bag, untouched since the day I had taken it off. The marriage had ended, my husband had moved on quickly, too quickly, with someone else, and I had told myself that I didn't care, that I was better off, that I had escaped something that was never going to last. And maybe I had believed it, at least until I walked into that room and saw my sister standing there, my dress draped over her arms, her face alight with amusement, like she had just stumbled upon buried treasure. "You're actually taking it?" I asked, my voice careful, measured, pretending like I didn't care, like it was nothing more than a curiosity, like I wasn't already piecing together the sick irony of it all. She twirled in front of the mirror, holding the dress against herself, the silk pooling at her feet, the lace sleeves brushing against her bare arms. "Well, why not? It's beautiful, and it fits me perfectly," she said, as if that was all the justification she needed, as if the history wrapped up in that fabric meant nothing, as if it wasn't tied to a chapter of my life that had nearly broken me. "Besides," she added, her voice light, her eyes sharp, "you won't need it again anyway." I felt the words like a slap, sharp and stinging, a casual dismissal of everything I had been through, of the years I had spent trying to piece myself back together after my marriage fell apart, of the quiet, private grief I had swallowed down when I signed those divorce papers and walked away from a life I had once thought was forever. And Melanie? She didn't care. She never had. She had never liked my ex-husband, had barely tolerated the wedding, had laughed at the divorce like it was some joke at my expense. And now, she was standing there, wearing the dress I had chosen, the dress I had worn on the happiest day of my life, until it wasn't. I should have said no. I should have ripped it out of her hands, told her she had no right, told her to find her own damn dress instead of stealing mine. But instead, I swallowed the words, forced a breath into my lungs, and let my lips curve into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Sure," I said, voice light, easy, as if it didn't matter, as if I wasn't already imagining the satisfaction I would feel when the moment finally came. "Take it." She grinned, triumphant, as if she had won something, as if this was just another game and I had let her win, as if she had gotten away with it scot-free. But before I walked away, before I left her standing there in my old dress with that smug little smile on her face, I let my gaze flicker toward the garment bag hanging from the closet door, my fingers tightening just slightly at my sides as an idea slid into place, slow and deliberate, curling around my thoughts like a whisper. "Fine. take the dress. But she would regret it. That much I could promise. Melanie had no idea that by smirking with my wedding dress in her arms, she had lit a slow-burning fuse in me, one that wouldn't explode with screaming or slamming doors or some dramatic scene like she probably expected, but something much quieter. Something colder, something infinitely more satisfying. I didn't react the way she thought I would, and that was the first move in the game I had quietly decided to play. I congratulated her on her engagement with the kind of warmth that could easily be mistaken for genuine happiness, even though it was hollow and practiced and just thick enough to make her believe I meant it. I told her she'd make a beautiful bride, even as I imagined the precise moment I would ruin her perfect day. That dress? She could have it, but I'd make sure it carried a little something extra down the aisle. At dinner that night, our mother was practically glowing, fussing over Melanie's wedding like it was the royal event of the decade. She talked nonstop about flowers and venues and guest lists, her hands fluttering excitedly as she listed all the things that needed to be done, completely oblivious, or maybe willfully blind, to the fact that her younger daughter had helped herself to something that didn't belong to her. When I gently brought it up, just a casual mention over the mashed potatoes, Mom waved me off like I was being petty. "She's your sister," she said, "and the dress looks better on her anyway." That was her version of fairness. I glanced at Dad, who sat silently, chewing his food and staring at the television across the room, detached as ever. He never got involved in our messes, just sat in the eye of the storm like it wasn't raining. So I smiled. I leaned in. I asked about napkin colors and cake tastings and whether she was going to have a live band or a DJ. I listened to Melanie talk about the dress fittings and the alterations she planned to make. "Little things," she said, like removing the sleeves, changing the neckline, giving it her own flair. I nodded like I was proud. I even offered to go with her to the bridal shop if she wanted a second opinion. She hesitated, just for a second, probably wondering if there was something behind the offer, but then smiled tightly and said she'd let me know. Over the next few weeks, I let myself become the picture of support. I answered her calls. I helped her organize her bachelorette weekend. I acted like everything was water under the bridge, like I wasn't still thinking about the look on her face when she said I'd never need the dress again. I kept things light, playful, even sisterly. But I also started planting little seeds, slipping them into conversations so subtly that even I could have believed they were innocent. One day, while helping her pack bridal shower gifts into her car, I said, "I hope you don't mind. I made a few little changes to the dress before putting it in storage. Just tiny adjustments. You probably won't even notice them." Her eyes flicked up from the box she was loading, and for a split second, I saw it, the flicker of uncertainty, the twitch of doubt. But she said nothing, just nodded and moved on like it didn't matter. That was how it always went with Melanie. She never showed her hand until she was cornered. Another time, while flipping through old photos with her during a lazy Sunday visit, I pointed to one of me in the dress, standing in the hotel lobby before the ceremony, and said with a half smile, "I still can't believe what happened with the dress that night. Wild times." She blinked. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice a little too casual. I shrugged. "Oh, nothing. Just, you know how weddings are. So much drama. You block half of it out eventually." Then I turned the page like it was no big deal. But it was. Because now the dress wasn't just a dress, it was a mystery. The thing about Melanie was that her confidence had always been paper thin. She could bluff, posture, act like she was untouchable, but she needed things to be perfect. She needed control. And the thought that there might be something she didn't know, something potentially disastrous, unsettled her more than she would ever admit. The next time I saw her, she was inspecting the dress like it might come alive and bite her. She asked, almost offhandedly, if I had noticed any stains on it when I packed it away. I paused for a second, just long enough to make her nervous, and said, "Well, I had it professionally cleaned. But only after everything was dealt with." Her eyes narrowed. "What do you mean, dealt with?" I shrugged, letting the silence sit between us like a third person in the room. "It's nothing. Just, you know." After everything that happened that night, I couldn't even look at it for a while. But hey, at least it's clean now, right? Then I turned away before she could ask anything else, leaving her there with that itchy feeling in her skin, wondering what the hell I meant. Have you ever had a family member cross a line so badly that you had to take action? I'm not talking about the usual sibling squabbles or someone eating your leftovers. I mean really cross a line, the kind of betrayal that makes you stop and ask yourself if maybe, just maybe, it's time to stop turning the other cheek. I let Melanie take that dress without a fight, but don't think for a second that meant I forgave her. No, I was just getting started. And the best part? She didn't even see it coming. By now, Melanie was starting to get paranoid. She wouldn't say it outright, of course, because she still needed me to play the role of the supportive sister, still wanted me around for the toasts and the prep and the pre-wedding bonding, still needed my approval in her own twisted way. But I saw it in the way she kept checking the seams of the dress, in the nervous glances she threw my way when I spoke about that night. I hadn't told her what I had done. Not yet. But she knew on some level, she knew, something was off. And that was exactly how I wanted her. Because the best revenge isn't loud or violent or immediate. It's slow. It's quiet. It's wearing white down an aisle with a ticking time bomb stitched right into the seams. And she had no idea when it was going to go off. Melanie had always been the type to brush off other people's feelings, to dismiss concerns that didn't align with her own interests, to carry herself with the unshakable confidence of someone who had never truly suffered the consequences of her actions. But tonight, just hours before her perfect wedding, something had shifted in her demeanor, a subtle but undeniable change, the kind of thing I might have overlooked if I wasn't paying such close attention. She was nervous, though she tried to hide it, her fingers constantly smoothing over the lace of the dress, adjusting the bodice, running her hands along the beading like she was searching for some unseen flaw. I watched from across the room as she stood in front of the mirror, twisting and turning, her eyes narrowing slightly as she traced the delicate embroidery with her fingertips, her lips pressing together in something that looked suspiciously like uncertainty. "Does this look different to you?" she asked, her voice light, casual, but with that unmistakable edge of doubt creeping into it, the one she got when things weren't quite going according to plan. I tilted my head, pretending to inspect the dress with the same level of scrutiny she was suddenly applying to it, though my amusement was barely hidden behind my carefully practiced expression of curiosity. "I mean, it's hard to say," I murmured, stepping a little closer, letting my gaze flicker over the delicate fabric like I was searching for something just out of reach. "You don't see it, do you?" I added, my voice dropping slightly, just enough to make her breath catch in her throat, just enough to make her second-guess everything she thought she knew. Her head snapped toward me, her eyes narrowing as she studied my face like she was trying to read something in it, but I only shrugged, offering her a soft, almost sympathetic smile before turning away, leaving her standing there with her own reflection staring back at her, wide-eyed and uneasy. She exhaled sharply, her fingers twitching as she smoothed down the bodice again, and I knew, without a doubt, that my plan was working even better than I had hoped. "You're messing with me," she muttered, shaking her head, but the way she glanced at herself in the mirror told me she wasn't quite sure. I let out a quiet laugh, low and knowing, just enough to make her wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was something to be worried about after all. "Nothing," I said, waving a hand dismissively. "Forget it." But she couldn't forget it, not now, not after everything I had spent the past few weeks planting in her mind, all the little seeds of doubt, all the carefully placed comments, all the half-truths and implications that made her wonder if maybe she didn't know the full story about this dress, about what had happened to it, about what might still be lingering in its seams. She turned back to the mirror, her fingers tightening around the fabric at her waist, her expression darkening as she studied the reflection staring back at her, and I could practically feel the tension radiating from her skin. Hours before the most important day of her life, and she was unraveling. And I wasn't finished yet. I let her stew in her thoughts for a little while, giving her just enough space to start doubting herself, to start picking apart every little memory she had of the dress. to start wondering if maybe she had missed something when she had so casually stolen it from me. Then, when I knew she was on the edge of needing answers, when I could see the frustration tightening her jaw, I leaned in just slightly, lowering my voice as I said, "I just hope nothing comes back." She stiffened instantly, her entire body going still, her breath catching in her throat as her eyes snapped to mine, filled with confusion and something dangerously close to fear. "What the hell does that mean?" she demanded, her voice sharp, but there was a flicker of hesitation beneath the surface, an uncertainty she couldn't quite mask. I hesitated for just a moment, long enough to let her anxiety settle deep into her bones, long enough to let her mind start racing through every possibility, before I shook my head and smiled, turning on my heel without another word. I didn't need to explain anything. I had already given her everything she needed to destroy herself. As I walked away, I could hear her muttering under her breath, could hear the restless rustling of fabric as she continued inspecting the dress, searching for something she would never find, searching for the truth that I wasn't going to give her. The truth was, she would never really know what I had done to the dress, whether I had done anything at all. And that was the beauty of it. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't about what you do. It's about what they think you might have done. Melanie woke up to the kind of panic that settled deep into the bones, the kind that started as a whisper in the back of the mind before growing into something loud, relentless, and impossible to ignore. The moment she opened her eyes, she felt it, that gnawing, unshakable feeling that something was wrong, something was off, something about the dress she had been so eager to claim as her own wasn't sitting right anymore. She had spent half the night tossing and turning, her dreams fractured and restless, haunted by vague, unsettling images she couldn't quite piece together when she woke up, but the sensation lingered, crawling under her skin like an itch she couldn't reach. She threw the covers off her body, sitting up in bed, her heart pounding against her ribs as she turned her head sharply toward the garment bag hanging from the back of the door. The once beloved dress now looming in the early morning light like an omen she didn't understand. For the first time since she had taken it, since she had smirked and dismissed me like I was nothing, she hesitated before touching it, her fingers hovering just inches from the fabric, her pulse quickening as she thought about everything I had said. Everything I had not said, everything I had let linger in the air like a secret waiting to be uncovered. She finally unzipped the bag, her breath hitching as she pulled the dress out, holding it up to the light, her eyes scanning every inch of the lace, the beading, the satin, desperate to find whatever invisible flaw had been eating at her mind all night. She turned it over in her hands, ran her fingers along the seams, stretched the fabric between her palms as if expecting it to split open and reveal whatever horror she had convinced herself was hidden within it. But there was nothing, at least, nothing she could see. And that was the worst part. By the time she made it downstairs, her expression was tight, her movements jerky, her jaw clenched so tightly I thought she might crack a tooth. She walked into the kitchen where I was already waiting, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee, watching the steam curl into the air as if I hadn't been lying awake half the night, grinning at the thought of this exact moment. She sat across from me, placing the dress carefully over the back of a chair, her fingers drumming against the table, the tension radiating off her like heat from pavement in the middle of summer. She didn't say anything at first, just sat there, staring at me, waiting for me to break the silence, waiting for me to say something that would confirm her worst fears. So I did. "Oh," I said, my voice light, casual, as if I had just remembered something unimportant, as if it wasn't about to set her entire wedding morning on fire. "I probably should have mentioned, when I wore that dress, my ex-husband's side chick tried it on too." I paused just long enough to see the color drain from her face, her fingers freezing mid-drum against the wooden table, her lips parting in silent horror before I twisted the knife just a little deeper. In fact, she spent a whole night in it. In our hotel room. But hey, I got it cleaned. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still, as if even the air in the room had paused to brace for impact, as if the weight of my words had sucked all the oxygen out of the space between us. Then, just as I had anticipated, just as I had counted on, The reaction came like an explosion, sudden, violent, completely unstoppable. Her chair scraped against the floor as she shoved back from the table, her hands flying to her head, fingers digging into her scalp as a strangled sound escaped her throat, half scream, half incomprehensible wail. "You're lying!" she shrieked, her voice raw with fury and something else, something dangerously close to devastation. "You're just trying to ruin this for me. You're making this up." I shrugged, taking a slow sip of my coffee, letting the bitterness roll over my tongue as I watched her unravel. "Why would I lie?" I mused, tilting my head slightly, the picture of calm as she paced the kitchen like a caged animal. "I mean, it's not like I was the one who invited another woman into my wedding suite, but, mistakes were made. I just thought you should know since, well, you're about to walk down the aisle in that dress." Melanie's hands were shaking now, her breaths coming in short, ragged gasps as her gaze darted wildly between me and the dress, her mind racing through every possibility, every horrifying scenario, every image she had conjured up in the dead of night that she had tried so hard to push away. And then, with a sharp, wordless cry, she lunged for it, gripping the fabric with both hands, yanking it toward her as if she could physically tear the truth out of it. And then she did. With a scream of sheer frustration, she pulled at the seams, her nails digging into the delicate lace, ripping at the bodice, her movements frantic, unhinged, utterly out of control. The sound of tearing fabric filled the kitchen, followed by the gasping sobs of a bride whose perfect day was crumbling right in front of her. I leaned back in my chair, cradling my coffee cup between my hands, watching with barely concealed amusement as my sister, the one who had always won, the one who had always taken, the one who had never faced consequences, completely lost her mind in the middle of what was supposed to be the happiest morning of her life. The chaos escalated from there, voices rising, doors slamming, my mother rushing into the room with wide, panicked eyes, demanding to know what was happening, her hands flying to her mouth as she took in the shredded remains of the dress. Melanie turned to her, eyes wild, tears streaking down her perfectly contoured cheeks, clutching fistfuls of the ruined gown as if she could somehow piece it back together by sheer will alone. "What do I do?" she wailed, her voice breaking, her entire body shaking with disbelief, with rage, with the realization that for once, she wasn't in control anymore. And then, slowly, so painfully slowly, my mother's eyes shifted from Melanie to me, realization dawning behind them, her lips parting slightly as if she was finally, putting the pieces together. I met her gaze with a quiet smile, took another slow sip of my coffee, and let the silence hang between us. She knew. And for once, I wasn't sorry. For a full minute, nobody said a damn word. My mother just stood there in the doorway of the kitchen, her hands clenched into trembling fists at her sides, staring down at the shredded remains of what used to be my wedding dress now lying in a sad, twisted heap on the tile floor, soaked in the heat of Melanie's tears and unraveling desperation. My sister, wild-eyed and breathless, had collapsed to her knees beside the pile of torn fabric like she was at a funeral, clutching scraps of satin to her chest as if they could somehow hold her world together. Her mascara had already started running in thick black streaks, turning her face into a canvas of regret, panic, and pure, unfiltered rage. The silence was broken when my mother stepped toward me, her voice tight with a frantic edge I hadn't heard since I was a teenager, caught sneaking out the back door one night with a bottle of vodka in my purse and a boy named Lucas waiting in his dad's truck. "Olivia," she said, barely holding it together, "you have to fix this. Please. Her wedding starts in 5 hours. There's no time. You need to do something." And I just stood there, completely calm, holding my half-empty coffee cup like I hadn't just detonated an emotional grenade in the middle of my sister's big day. I shrugged slowly, deliberately, letting the moment stretch between us while Melanie sobbed in the background like a spoiled child watching her birthday party get rained out. I tilted my head and met my mother's eyes, letting her see the cold clarity in mine, the quiet finality that had been years in the making. "I don't know," I said, dragging out the words with careful indifference, Maybe she should have thought of that before stealing my dress and telling me I'd never need it again. The second I said it, Melanie let out this awful, strangled sound, something between a gasp and a scream, and shot to her feet, clutching a wad of torn tulle in her fists, shaking with fury. "You ruined it!" she yelled, pointing a finger at me like she was laying down a curse. "You ruined my wedding day. You did this. You planned this from the start, didn't you? You sick, jealous bitch." I didn't flinch, not even a little. I'd been waiting for this exact moment, the grand finale of her unraveling, the moment she realized that for once, she wasn't the one pulling the strings, and she didn't like it. She had always loved to play the victim when it suited her, loved to spin herself into the wounded party when the truth got too close to the surface, but not today. Not with me. I stepped forward, slow and steady, until we were standing just a breath apart, and I could see the raw, miserable chaos swirling in her eyes. "Oh, honey," I said, my voice low and sharp, the words slicing through the air like a scalpel. "I didn't ruin your wedding day. You did. The second you took something that wasn't yours and acted like it was your right. The moment you looked me in the eye and told me I'd never wear it again. That's when this all started. Not when I said something. Not when I hinted at something. When you decided that what you wanted mattered more than anyone else." Her lip trembled, but she said nothing. I watched the words land like a punch to the gut, and for once, there was no comeback. No smirk. No sharp jab cloaked in a smile. Just silence. Just shame. My mother opened her mouth to speak again, to plead maybe, or to scold, or God knows what else, but I didn't give her the chance. I stepped back, ran a hand through my hair, and gave her a half smile. "Don't worry," I said. "She'll still have her big day. Just not in that dress." And I walked out. I didn't stick around to help with the emergency dress hunt, didn't offer to drive to some sad little bridal boutique in the suburbs for a last-minute clearance rack rescue. I didn't hover in the background like an afterthought or offer a half-hearted toast during the reception like some obedient older sister playing her role. I walked out of that house, out of that moment, and into the sunlight with the kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. Later, I heard the wedding still happened. The pictures showed a new dress, cheap, off the rack, rushed to the venue with the tags barely cut off. Melanie looked fine. The smile was there, sure, but it didn't reach her eyes. And every time someone complimented the dress, she apparently flinched, like it physically hurt to be reminded of what she should have been wearing. And me? I poured a glass of wine that evening, curled up on the couch with my dog, and watched the sunset from my balcony, feeling something close to victory, but not just because I got even. It was because I reminded her, and everyone else, that taking from someone doesn't come without cost. Especially not from someone who's finally done playing nice. Let her scream. Let her cry. Let her spin the story however she wants at the next family dinner. I knew the truth, and now so did she. Some dresses aren't just fabric. Some carry memories, mistakes, even warnings stitched into the seams. And when you try to rewrite someone else's story to fit your fantasy, don't be surprised when it unravels right in your hands. Melanie thought she could wear my past like it was just another accessory. But she forgot something crucial. Some ghosts don't stay in the closet. Some come with a zipper. And a damn good sense of timing.